This video is sponsored by Skillshare. I'll tell you more about them a bit later. I'm wondering if you can relate to this. You buy a book, it arrives, it goes on your shelf, and then you never read it. Or maybe you get a new book, pick it up, start reading it a little bit, but once you put it down, put it away on the shelf, and it never seems to come back out again. On the other hand, maybe you picked up a book, started reading it, and you just couldn't put it down. The book felt super relevant to your life, and you could see yourself in it and just got so much information from it that you feel like it was the right book at the right time. What always seems to happen is out in the wild, I see something or learn something that contributes to what I learned in the book that I read and really enjoyed. Maybe it's a lesson about healthy relationships and emotional well-being from the book that ends up showing in the dynamics between two characters in a show that I'm watching. That's something that's happened multiple times over the last several months. I believe that culturally we have a completionist or perfectionist mentality towards reading books or learning things or doing things, just checking things off the to-do list. So when something happens like starting a book and then not reading it, it can create a lot of guilt, a lot of feelings of failure or things like that when it just sits on our bookshelf. Whether one of these scenarios or the other is more relevant to you right now and how you're feeling about your life, there's something that I wanted to share from my own journey that I have found about something very simple. And that is learning to trust the process. And in my experience over the last 2 years or so, what I've found, especially focusing on something called non-judgmental awareness, meaning trying to see what it is that we see without judging it, it has allowed me to see things that I really didn't understand previously. And that is this idea of trusting the process, but more specifically, the concept of when the student is ready, the teacher arrives. Whenever I wouldn't finish a book, or whenever I would put something down and not go back to it, really it just meant that I wasn't ready for what that book had to share. And maybe it wasn't something that was super relevant to me at the time, or it wasn't the exact message that I needed to help get me to the next step. Because every time that I would find a book that I was really into, that felt appropriate for me at the time, or something that I was really interested in, what always seemed to happen was that I would see examples from the book that helped reinforce things that I would see out in the world and the principles and the understandings that I really needed. Whether it was a person coming into my life at just the right time or simply another book that led to simply connecting ideas from the past one. I've both read and listened to dozens of books over the last couple years, and I can't even begin to describe to you how many times a completely unrelated book will have connecting ideas that run in tandem with the ideas from the previous book I read. Even if the second book is fiction versus a nonfiction, seeing the dynamics of relationships, seeing the dynamics of belief and positivity and habits and self-compassion and how all these things come together to create a more peaceful, just self-assured life. So there are a few simple lessons from this that I've been working on incorporating in my own life. The first is trust the process. You're going to see what you need to see when you're ready for it from just about whatever it is that you are watching, reading, whatever comes up in conversation. Trusting the process means just showing up, being curious, and allowing the path to unfold in front of you. The second thing is that it is really quite unhelpful to be cruel to ourselves for not finishing something when we're not ready for it. We can blame ourselves for not making the time to sit down, but especially when it comes to more vulnerable topics like relationships, emotional health, well-being, dealing with some difficult issues that we might be struggling with in our personal lives, whatever it comes to, whatever that is, it just means that our awareness, our subconscious, is still a little too judgmental of what it means to learn that information, what it might mean about us, and we haven't created, let's say, the safe enough environment for us to be able to see that information, grow in our awareness without having it hurt too much. So when we put things down, maybe we're just bored, maybe we're not that interested, or it doesn't really capture our attention. But also, maybe there's something deeper going on beneath the surface that we're not yet aware of. And that's okay. The third thing is being open to possibility. Now, of course, this requires a bit of faith, trusting that the right thing is going to come along for you as long as you keep putting your foot out and stepping it down on the ground in front of you. This one can be the hardest because it's very easy to want to know what's going to happen, to try to overplan and create the circumstances that we want, the things we feel like we need to prove ourselves, or a certain amount of income or a certain success milestone, things like that. But realistically, in my life at least, the most wonderful things have come from simply making myself available, from saying yes to things here and there, from saying no when I needed to say no and actually learning how to do that well. Just stepping into the process, making yourself available, and seeing what comes of it. So if you happen to put down a book before you finish it, or not feel like you want to finish something that is a pretty heavy topic or something you're just not ready for yet, I hope this context allows you to give yourself a little more self-compassion in trusting the process, that it's just not the right time for that book, and that something else will come that has the information you need. And regardless of what you're doing, the next steps will present themselves in a way that works. Thanks again to Skillshare for sponsoring this portion of the video. Skillshare can help you make 2022 a year of new learning, growth, connection, and creativity. Do you have a specific skill you're trying to learn? Skillshare is the perfect place to start. I joined Skillshare because I love having immediate access to high quality courses where I can learn just about anything I want to learn. You all know that I have a huge variety of interests, and Skillshare really does have it all. I recently started my own cactus collection in the backyard this winter, and I found so much helpful information in this succulents and cacti care course. And when I'm ready to digitally illustrate these little guys, there's a course for that too. The first 1,000 people that click the link in the description of this video will get a free 1-month premium Skillshare trial. Skillshare really is wonderful. I am a paying member myself. I've been using it for well over a year. So make sure to check it out, click the link, and thanks again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video.